I'm David Scandura,
I'm Justus Burkett.
and today we're here to find out is Prince of Egypt the greatest movie ever made?
The tickles. Ladies, you've cleaned every inch of me. Whoa, I was wrong.
Welcome to the greatest movie ever made! The show where we watch a movie and tell you it's the greatest movie ever made!
I'm not sure what this.
I'm betting everything on Sepulva! He always wins!
Do you know what episode we're doing?
We're doing the Prince of Egypt!
Why are you Watto?
I've been talking to Watto. I've been talking in Watto voice alone in my apartment for the last 2 days straight.
I'm not sure.
I just happen to have a chance cube here!
I'm not sure that we should be opening the Prince of Egypt with a Watto impression. Given the criticism that character specifically has received.
Yeah, I was watching Attack of the Clones, and I know that Watto's a Jewish stereotype, but it's past the point.
Highly offensive one.
It's past the point where I'm just like, oh, that's just Watto.
Right.
Like, I just see Watto. But I was watching Attack of the Clones where he's, like, a little bit older, and he's got the, like, neck beard going on, and he's at the little stand
Right.
in Tatooine. And I was like, you know, I could kind of see him as a Greek guy, though.
Doesn't it?
Like,
Yeah.
this could be like his Slovaki stand. I bet he cooks a mean gyro.
Not that the stereotype is any less offensive if he is Greek. It's still quite a cartoonish racial stereotype, which, by the way, Phantom Menace is notably full of.
Yeah.
Watto's not even the most egregious example. Those Trade Federation guys are way worse. We will not be doing that voice.
It's the greatest movie ever made. That's the show.
Yeah, that's what we're here
David.
to do.
I'm Watto, joined as always by...
My co-host Justus Burkett.
I really can't with the Watto voice. I wasn't expecting it at all. You had not indicated to me in any way that you were going to start this episode as Watto.
No pop is worth 2 slaves, not by a long shot.
It's just fun.
Yeah.
It's just fun to do it.
Yeah.
Is it fun to listen to it?
Yeah. Again, I think I was more thrown because this episode we are here to talk about the animated film The Prince of Egypt based on the story of Moses. So I think the thing that was really throwing me was the fact that Watto showed up for this episode. We're not talking about Star Wars. We're not talking about Star Wars. If we say that one more time, I've said it twice. If we say it one more time,
We're not talking about Star Wars.
I'm pretty sure George Lucas will show up like Beetlejuice. No, knowing that guy. Anyway, no, we're here to talk about DreamWorks' The Prince of Egypt, which so that'll be fun. David, how you doing?
I'm okay.
Yeah?
I mean, I've been talking in Watto voice the last 2 days, so I know what that says about the state of my mental health, but I'm okay. Gym was weird today. I was supposed to hit, I did hit some big numbers, but well below the maxes that I wanted to do, and I didn't. I missed my bench and I missed my deadlift, which kind of sucked. So, gym is still an emotional and difficult place for me at times, but I never regret going.
Yeah.
I never get home from gym and I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't fucking go to gym today.
Right.
That sucked.
Yeah.
But it's still just like a little disheartening at times when you don't hit the lifts that you don't hit the numbers that you want, don't hit the lifts that you want. So
Yeah.
that kind of sucked. But
Well,
otherwise, I think I'm all right.
I'm sorry that the gym has been rough. I know how that goes, but I'm glad you're doing okay otherwise.
Yeah, how are you doing? How was gym today for you?
I didn't finish my workout because I spent an hour squatting, and then I was like, I do have to come home and record the pod at some point. So I was like, I'll do a few of my accessories and just call it, which I did. But it was fine. And I'm feeling fine about that stuff. Overall, I'm doing pretty well. Better than last record. I feel like I was on the brink of a full psychotic break last week, and now I feel like I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
So that's good. So yeah, nothing really fun or interesting to report. I do have a media recommendation,
Okay.
which is of course Kira McSpice, an artist who I've mentioned on the podcast before, came out with a new album called The Compartmentalization of Decay. I highly recommend that our listeners go seek it out and listen to it. She's like a relatively small artist, like not a lot of people know about her, and she doesn't sell tons of records or anything, so the support for small artists always goes like a little further, So if you want to give it something to listen, you're looking for some new music, I would highly recommend that album. I think it's great. It comes from a very personal place of like very intense pain and kind of overcoming that. And I think like all of the best art, it is intensely personal and very specific, but also has an element of universality that anyone can relate to. So yeah, go check that out. I think it's great. Been enjoying it a lot.
Yeah, the media I have to recommend is I've been stealing bagels.
That's not a media recommendation, David.
So you go to your local supermarket. You put the bagels from the bakery into the brown bag, and then you go to self-checkout and you just don't pay for them. Or you pay for one.
You pay for one bagel?
Or, you keep your eye on the guy who's looking at you.
Yeah.
There's one guy in particular that always seems to be there for me, and I think he's on to me at this point. But it doesn't matter because I'm spending more money on cream cheese than I am on bagels.
Yeah.
Because I go through a shitload of cream cheese. So, like, they can fucking take the hit when I'm buying multiple tubs of cream cheese for 4 bagels.
Can you say bagels again?
Bagels.
It sounds like you say bagels.
Bagels? Bagels. How do you say bagels?
Bagels.
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 There's more of an A in there for you?
Yeah,
Bagels.
yeah. I say bagels. It
Bagels.
sounded like you were saying bagels.
Bagels. I don't know.
This is great podcasting right now.
You supply the bagel, the cream cheese. I supply the boy. We split the winnings of 50-50, I think.
So just to be clear, you started this episode as Watto, and your media recommendation is steal bagels from your local grocery
Yeah,
store.
shit's expensive. You've seen the economy. What the fuck is going on here? Bagels are the food of the people.
But who doesn't love a good bagel? I had a lox on a salt bagel with some capers and all that, the works, tomato and all that on there the other day, and it was fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about bagels, David.
Oh, I also listened to Gate Creeper's album Sonoran Deprivation, which they're a Phoenix-based death metal band.
Yeah.
That album came out a few years ago. I was listening to that in the gym today while almost being crushed under 245 pounds on my bench press.
The best way to listen to death metal, grindcore is being crushed by weights that might kill you.
Yeah. The safeties were up, so it didn't land on my neck and killed me.
Good.
And I just sort of turned my head and snuck out of it. And there was a guy on the bike who was the bike right next to me who was ready to jump down and assist if needed, but his services were not required because of the safeties.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I liked it. It's good meat and potatoes, caveman, death metal to pound some light beer and grill to.
Hell yeah.
Let's talk about Prince of Egypt finally.
Yeah, I got a fucking media recommendation for you. It's called the Holy Bible. Ever heard of it? Because we're talking about Prince of Egypt. Yeah. David, tell me about your history with the DreamWorks animated a Bible story, Torah story, Quran adjacent story. I don't know if Moses is in the Quran, but I know that he's like a prophet in Islam. Tell me about your history with this film.
So way back in the 90s, I was a little Catholic boy, and I watched this movie. I don't know if I saw this in the theaters, but it was a pretty big staple of our home viewing rotation. So we watched this a lot at home, and I was thinking about it, and I think that this is one, the Bible story that I'm most familiar with because of this movie, and also the religious movie, the religious musical that I am most familiar with. Stuff like Jesus Christ Superstar, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I think DreamWorks did a Joseph sequel to this.
Yeah.
Animated one as well.
I think it's called like the Code of Dreams or something.
Yeah, something
Not
like
sure.
that. Even shit like Godspell.
Yeah.
I've seen all of those, but I don't know them as well as I know Prince of Egypt.
Gotcha.
So yeah, this was a staple of my childhood, and I became an atheist in middle school. I say that I think I started more questioning things in middle school, and then by high school I was like, yeah, I think I'm an atheist. And it's one that I've revisited a couple times, because around Easter, around Passover, my friends and I occasionally watch religious themed films. So this is one that I've seen a handful of times in recent years. And we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But it definitely left a big impact on me as a kid.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. I'm sort of in a similar boat as you, I think, where this was like a childhood staple for me growing up. I too was raised Christian, not Catholic. I was raised sort of not evangelical Protestant, but we were sort of evangelical adjacent. We were technically like non-denominational Protestant. But yeah, so I was raised on Christian music and VeggieTales and lots of other Christian media.
Yeah, VeggieTales was a big one.
And this was also in there, right? This came out when I was like 6 years old, I think. Pretty much saw it immediately. Might have seen it in the theater.
Did you ever get into Bible Man?
Yes. Oh my. Holy shit. You've just unlocked like a core memory.
Because when we would go to like the Christian bookstores or whatever,
Yes.
I would see Bible Man shit, like
Yes.
action figures and stuff.
Yes.
And I wanted that, but I never
you-
watched it, never got into it.
You've never
at
seen
all.
Bible Man?
I have not consumed a single piece of Bible Man media.
I bet Bible Man's on YouTube. I know you just went down the Carmen rabbit hole. Carmen is a Christian musical artist.
Oh, God.
A very prolific Christian musical artist. I know last year or a couple years ago, you went down the Carmen rabbit hole. I feel like something similar would happen with Bible Man if you just like went and found Bible Man on because he's a superhero who is dressed sort of like a cross between Batman and a Power Ranger.
Yeah.
I think his suit is like purple and yellow, but he also has a yellow lightsaber. They straight up just gave him a lightsaber, which is I think is the sword of the spirit, right? And he's got the shield of truth or whatever because it's all armor of God, the whole shebang. And he fights like monsters that are like temptation or something. It's bananas. It literally is like, what if Power Rangers was Christian and also the production values were even lower than like a Power Rangers TV show. It's nuts.
I don't know why I never got into it.
Yeah.
Because it's not like my parents were somewhat restrictive of the things that we watched, but like I watched shit like Power Rangers and Batman when I was a kid. There were certain things like Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon that they didn't like, but yeah,
I wasn't allowed to watch Pokemon, but it wasn't because of the Christian thing. It was because there was that story about those kids getting epilepsy in the one Porygon episode.
Yeah.
And so not getting epilepsy. Sorry, you can't contract epilepsy from watching television. Having epileptic seizures due to the flashing lights in that one episode. But even though my brother and I, as far as we knew, didn't have epilepsy, my parents were like, kids are getting seizures watching this show, so maybe we should not allow our children to watch it.
Yeah.
But it had nothing to do with the church thing.
Yeah, my parents were more concerned about just like violent media and violent content.
Gotcha.
It wasn't
Yeah.
like Pokemon are an abomination against God.
They're demons.
Yeah. So yeah, we haven't even talked about your relationship with this movie yet. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
We went on a tangent, but
that's fine. We're allowed to go on tangents. Today seems like it's going to be tangent heavy. For whatever reason, it feels like the energy in the room is both neither you nor I can string two thoughts together right now. Yeah, so like big childhood staple for me, like I said, watched a lot, probably saw it in the theater, definitely owned it on like home video. So I've seen this movie a ton of times. And when I got a little bit older, I kind of continued watching this pretty regularly because I have two siblings who are considerably younger than me. So children's media kind of stayed on in the house until like I moved out to go to college. So this was just kind of always on. And yeah, it was interesting revisiting it because since I moved out and went to college, I probably hadn't seen this movie in like 15 years. Yeah, so that's kind of my relationship with the movie. I never really, so like I ended high school kind of still being like, I am a Christian and I believe in the Bible and stuff. And I've never really had a moment where I've fully been like, no, I don't believe in any of that stuff. I'm sort of like, I joked last week on the Centurion episode that I love Jesus and God. That is not a joke. I do love Jesus and God. Jesus, cool guy. God, I think he probably exists, and if so, I want to stay on his good side. But like, I
just
haven't...
don't enslave the Israelites.
Yeah. Or I mean, I guess do crimes against your fellow man.
Yeah, I guess.
all that to say, I have not, as far as like how this movie hits for me now, I haven't changed a ton in terms of what I believe, because I feel like I believe in, to borrow a phrase from one of my favorite found footage characters, that guy from the Borderlands, I believe in stuff, is sort of where I'm at. That's also kind of where I've been for, most of my life. So I feel like my viewing experience of The Prince of Egypt and other like religious media hasn't changed dramatically in how it hits for me. At the same time, when I say I believe in stuff, I don't believe that God, if God exists, doesn't want trans people to exist or be happy or have rights. I think that that's probably how you get on God's bad side, is by doing shit like oppressing transgender people or doing genocides. So all that to say, that's like sort of where I'm at and sort of where I was at going into this movie this week. But yeah.
And also, when I had my little Carman phase, I should mention Carman is dead, first of all.
Yes.
And also a giant homophobe.
Yeah,
and,
no,
shell
bad man.
for the right.
Yes.
So it was more like...
And it was ironic.
It was ironic.
Yes.
It was ironic.
It was, but yeah, he was a bad man.
Yeah. For me personally, in addition to being an atheist, I've also been quite critical of religion.
Yeah.
I like a lot of young atheists, I went through a Dawkins phase and a Hitchens phase.
Yeah.
Both people who I think are definitely problematic in certain ways. But I found there are treatises on atheism and religion and stuff like that to be pretty compelling, and a lot of what they said is stuff that I still agree with. But I find religion as a theme in media, whether that be books, movies, or music, to be something that still really compels me and interests me, and it comes up a lot in my own art. When I'm writing a poem or something, God is often something that is a recurring image in my own work. There's something about the power of religion that I find both fascinating and horrifying.
Yeah. There's something about belief and faith in something that you can't prove, or more the thing for me is that you can't understand, right? Basically being like, there is stuff, I don't want to say in the universe, right? Because it might be beyond the universe, right? That is so incomprehensible to me that I will never be able to understand it. It's literally like the unknowable, right? And I think that there's something that speaks to the human spirit about ideas like that, right? Because I think we want to believe that there is something like that out there. Because it's a lot, even if it's not necessarily a comforting idea, right? Because a lot of religion has kind of a comforting aspect to it. But just the idea on its own, like separated from any specific set of religious beliefs, it's like simultaneously like comforting, but also kind of scary to think that type of thing exists, right? Where it's like so far beyond human understanding that it's like unknowable to us. Like that's like a freaky idea too. And I think that the push and pull of that, where it's like, that's really scary if it's true, but also it's kind of comforting if it's true, because then like the human brain isn't the most advanced thinking thing that we will ever know. Right. I think there's just something about like the core idea there that like is very attractive to humans in general, especially because we have a tendency to look for cause and effect and seek patterns and stuff. And once you get to the Big Bang, it's like, okay, well, but what was that the effect of? Well, like where was the cause?
Right.
Right. So there's like there's a urge to look for that stuff, I think. Even for people who aren't religious, I think it's like still a compelling idea a lot of the time.
And I think as much as I have issues with the Bible and have issues with a lot of religious stories and a lot of religious mythology, there are some universal truths and universal stories to be found in them. And I think they can still be compelling and interesting to people who aren't religious. And but it's all, to me at least, sitting here at 31 years old, as an atheist who has somewhat softened his more, I guess you'll say, militant atheist tendencies. It's still something that I have to connect with a piece of religious media. It has to hit me at a very specific place and a very specific level, and that is a human level. I have to feel the humanity in that piece of art. And I think we should just jump into the movie.
Yes. Before we do that, I'm going to need you to re-say everything that you literally just said, but in the Watto voice. Don't actually.
It really does hurt my throat. It's like you really get. I've got polyps growing on the back of my throat as I speak.
Mind tricks don't work on me. I read a Richard Dawkins. I don't believe in that shit. I don't believe in the Force. I read Christopher Hitchens. He tell me the Force is...
Now it's turning Italian.
Yeah. You're going Italian.
He tell me the Force is fake.
Italian Watto.
That'd be less offensive, I think.
I think so. I think Greek Watto and Italian Watto are less offensive than Jewish Watto.
Yes, correct.
Also, I know it was probably bad idea on my part to do the Jewish stereotype on this movie, but at least it wasn't Schindler's List. At least I didn't decide to break out Watto on Schindler's List.
A movie that we probably won't ever do on this podcast. Like, I can't imagine... I can't imagine that would be a movie that we would be able to say anything of substance about. This movie, on the other hand, is an animated movie for children. Although, speaking of somewhat offensive to Jewish people, this movie has a little bit of a dearth of Jewish actors in the voice cast and also actors of Middle Eastern descent, which is a thing that is worth calling out about this movie.
So I did some homework on this that I have not yet revealed to you.
Okay.
So a couple weeks ago, I watched the Ridley Scott movie, Exodus, Gods and Kings.
Yeah.
Which is this story, but with white people.
Oh, okay.
And so I watched that.
Yeah.
And this morning, I actually read the Book of Exodus. I didn't read the entire Book of Exodus.
Yeah.
I read up to basically where this movie ends.
Right.
At the end, at the Red Sea.
It really ends at the 10 Commandments, which is funny because the next thing that happens after that is they're having a big party around a golden cow, and he's like, "What the fuck? I go up on the mountain for like 1 week."
Yeah. And then everything got fucked up with the Israelites after this.
As is a pattern in the Old Testament. It's basically like, and God helped them, and then they fucked shit up, and then he helped them again, and then they kept fucking shit up.
So I am all caught up on my Exodus lore.
Nice.
For being an atheist for the last 20 years of my life.
Cool.
Yeah, so this movie starts with a banger of an opening song.
Yes.
Deliver us, and we get images of slavery of the Israelites at the hands of the Egyptians.
Yeah.
Which is all pretty evocative and powerful.
Yeah. And right from the beginning, there's a thing that we should talk about, which, because it starts at the beginning and continues throughout, which is the animation of this thing, just the way that it looks. How do you feel about the animation in this movie, David?
So that's an interesting question.
Yeah,
I think the animation,
yeah,
the characters, the character designs, the way the characters move
yeah,
is fine.
yeah.
Kind of like, almost like occasionally it feels kind of lifeless and simplistic, and I don't really like the character designs.
Mm.
The backgrounds
Yeah.
and the framing of the backgrounds
Mhm.
and sometimes just the framing of the characters in this movie is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you there, where the character animations, I maybe liked them a little bit more than you did, but I was like, this is not my favorite thing about the artwork of this movie. It is those background compositions.
I was thinking of The Road to El Dorado, which was another DreamWorks animated film that came out around this time
Mhm.
that I also watched a ton.
Mm.
And thinking about how those characters looked and emoted in comparison to this movie. And El Dorado is a lot more comedic and a lot more, kind of your traditional family film in that way. So they're a lot more expressive and stuff. But there were times where I felt like, these characters should be expressing more emotion, and they just seem kind of stoic and
Right.
and boring
Yeah,
in places. But I think this movie does have a real cinematic eye
yeah,
behind how a lot of this stuff is framed and set up.
agreed.
And a lot of this opening stuff with the slaves and the majesty of Egyptian civilization being built on the backs of slavery. It's conveyed really well, and you feel that weight
Yeah,
on you.
yeah. During this opening song, we have sort of the beginning of the Moses story, right, where Egypt is putting all the babies to death, and his mom puts him on the river, and he ends up at the Pharaoh's house, and gets adopted by them. So basically, his family has to give him up to save his life. During this song, David, there is a justice cry count associated with this film.
Not surprised at all.
And now is the time. You know it's at least once. I would like you to guess how many times I cried during this movie.
I'm gonna go with 3
Okay.
for the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
So David's guess is a holy trinity of cries. So this was definitely number one. So I'll reveal the answer later. I cried during the river, oh river, that whole bit. And
When she's laying him into the river.
Yes, and I think more of it was just the music itself than any of the visuals. Even though the visuals I think are pretty good. Although that baby animation was occasionally approaching Uncanny Valley for me, slightly, where I was like,
that's an ugly looking.
I was like,
baby.
is that baby cute? And then I was like, ugh, in a couple of in a couple of shots. But the music just really got me. The music in this thing, like, just emotionally hits very hard for me, and it's probably a combination of the music actually being good and childhood nostalgia to some extent. But yeah, I was crying.
Yeah, there's a couple images from this sequence that I'd like to point out. There's a slave falls on the ground, and we get a close up of his hand, like as his withered hand contrasted against the sun, and then another hand reaches down and picks him up. So we see the camaraderie of the Israelites, persevering through this oppressive this oppressive situation that they're in. And then when Moses's basket is floating down the river, I love all of the stuff with the fish and the birds and
alligators,
the crocodiles and the, and the hippos
crocodiles.
and stuff.
Alligators are the American ones.
It feels supernatural.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily the right word, I think, but it feels like some of the spirituality of the film is conveyed in this moment,
Right.
where the animals are like ushering Moses
Yes.
on his journey or something like that.
Yes. Divine intervention leads him to Pharaoh's palace, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Pharaoh's wife pulls him out of the river, and man, what a head of hair this lady has.
I could never tell as a kid and now. Is that her hair or is that a headdress?
I also can't tell, but even if it is a headdress, I think it's a headdress over hair that has a similar like volume and shape to it, right? So even if that's like a black like headdress covering her hair, there's still hair under there filling that thing up, I think. Unless it's just stuffed with, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. But I always thought it was her hair. Regardless, it's crazy. And you know what else is crazy? So the Deliver Us number ends, and then we see grown-up Moses and Ramses, he's been adopted into Pharaoh's family. Ramses is his like adoptive brother, right? So we see them as young grown men. You know what else is nuts? While we're talking Egyptian hairstyles, Ramses has a one side ponytail, and then the rest of his head is completely shaved. he has it's not a ponytail on the back of his head. It is on one side of his head. I'm like, first of all, did this actually happen in ancient Egypt, or did they make this up for the movie, right? But also, if that was an actual ancient Egyptian hairstyle, that's still fucking bananas. That's maybe more bananas if people were actually doing that.
So here's the first allusion I'll make to Exodus, Gods, and Kings in this episode.
Yeah.
Joel Edgerton plays Ramses in that. He doesn't have the side ponytail hairstyle. Otherwise, looks exactly like Ramses in this movie. The eye makeup, the garments that he has on, like the necklaces.
Right. Yeah. They literally just watched this movie and
totally
were like,
bald.
We're gonna make you look exactly like that.
Maybe that's like historical interpretations of what Ramses actually looked like.
Yeah, because there's like paintings of him and stuff.
Because he's not even
Hieroglyphics.
in Exodus. He's very rarely referred to as Ramses.
Mm.
Most of the time he's just referred to as Pharaoh.
Right.
So I at some point, we align, either I think it might be later in the book of Exodus, because I didn't read the whole thing today, where they refer to him as Ramses, but at some point we made that connection.
Mm-hmm.
So there must be some artwork or statues out there of Ramses that we've looked at and determined that he was a bald guy with eye makeup,
or maybe
and
that was
maybe a side ponytail.
Maybe that was just a decision that Prince of Egypt made, and Exodus, Gods, and Kings was just lazy on their character design, and they were like, let's just do the thing that the animated.
It's funny how closely Exodus, Gods, and Kings follows this movie.
Yeah,
but
it is, the story is also from the Bible.
Like, no, you're right. But I mean, like, it's like, okay, Moses and Ramses are friends for 5 minutes,
right?
Then Moses finds out his heritage.
So you're talking in like terms of structure.
Yeah, and structurally,
right. Not just plot.
He goes into the desert.
Yeah.
The plagues happen in montage.
Yeah.
And then we have our whole Red Sea thing.
Right.
And then the end of the movie is like, and then the Ten Commandments happened.
And
like
we
jump ahead to the Ten Commandments and we'll cut to credits.
Watch the Charlton Heston movie if you're interested in that. But yeah, so here they have their little brotherly. They're horsing around literally because they're in chariots pulled by horses.
A couple things I want to mention here before you go further. One, this movie gets points in my book for having chariots.
Yeah,
love chariots in a movie.
Yes,
more movies should have chariots.
Have you ever seen Ben-Hur?
I haven't seen Ben-Hur.
You really got to see Ben-Hur.
Yeah. I've seen bits of the chariot race.
Yeah,
in like or the chariot sequence.
It's fucking baller, and they did it all like for real.
Yeah,
which is nuts.
Anyway. Oh, the good old days when we used to threaten people's lives while making movies. Second thing, DreamWorks around this time makes some very fuckable looking horses.
What?
So I'm thinking of Road to El Dorado.
I'm sorry.
The horse in Road to El Dorado and the horses in this look kind of similar. They're kind of hot. They're kind of fuckable.
I don't know if I can be on board with this.
Fuckable might be the wrong word.
At 0 points in this movie was I noticing anything about the sexual attractiveness of any of the animal characters.
I think I'm mostly thinking of the horse in Road to El Dorado, but the horses here look similar. There's just a look to them where it's like, that horse fucks.
I really don't know if I can get on board with this.
That's okay. It's not the first thing you haven't gotten on board with this episode. That's all right.
It's true. All right.
So this chariot race happens with these hot, sexy horses.
Holy shit. Yeah. And then and then Moses and Ramses cause $1 billion of property damage and probably kill a bunch of people.
It
Because
I watched this movie twice. I actually watched it again this morning. I didn't reveal it to you either. People are dying.
No, they straight up end multiple lives here because they release that fucking like they break like the sand dam.
Yeah.
And there's an avalanche of sand. And there's like all these priests just kind of like walking or whatever. And those guys get buried. And there is never a shot of like them coming out and being like, hey, you okay, Jim? Yeah, I'm all right, Pete. You know, like that shit never happens. So those guys are just dead, right?
Yeah. And
then later Moses feels so guilt-ridden about the later murder that he commits, right? The biblical murder that's actually in the story. And I'm like, you ended 12 lives earlier in this movie. I really don't know why you're so torn up about this.
The chariot race makes its way onto like scaffolding in front of the Sphinx.
Yeah, they knock the Sphinx's nose off.
They knock the Sphinx's nose off. But the guy who's painting the Sphinx's nose gets knocked off too, and he's like hanging on a rope or something, so presumably he fell.
Yeah, probably.
And then they destroy the scaffolding, so anyone who's on the scaffolding fell, and then like that sand dam breaks, and definitely those priests are buried underneath the sand.
It's nuts. And then it's very funny that after this sequence, like Ramses is like, oh, do you think Dad will be mad about this? And Moses is like, not a chance. And I'm like, okay, you don't think that he's going to be upset about, again, $1 billion of property damage? Because like they're breaking statues, scaffolding, all that sand that took however long to put behind a dam for some indiscernible reason. Now has to be put back where it was. And all these dudes are dead. So, of course, Dad is pissed. And he yells at them both. And that's pretty much our introduction to the family dynamic.
Voiced by Patrick Stewart.
Yes. Patrick Stewart is one of the standout voice performances in this movie that I wanted to mention.
Yeah, I would
think
agree.
He does a really great job.
I would agree. He's in the movie for 5 minutes, but he does a good job.
Yeah, he's not
also great visuals here.
Yeah.
With the throne room has a big window or a balcony that looks out onto Egypt, and the Sphinx or the statue of Seti.
Yeah.
The pharaoh. And there's moments where they frame Patrick Stewart's character against the statue, and it looks great.
Yeah.
Especially when he's talking about like the dynasty of Egypt, the legacy of Egypt.
They repeat that shot later with Ramses too, and it's him and then his father's statue and then his own statue, which is even bigger, which I like.
Yeah. Visually, I think this movie tells the story better than the script in a lot of places.
Yeah.
The script
I
and
agree.
the dialogue.
I agree.
But basically, they're being chastised and about their mistakes, and Moses owns up to the fact that it was his fault later. Right. And then later, Ramses is skulking on top of a statue in the throne in the palace, and Moses comes along to give him some shit and make fun of him.
Yeah.
I will also say Ray Fiennes is one of the standout voice performances for me here.
I agree. Yep.
And there's a fun moment where they talk about how Ramses is always getting in trouble for what Moses does, as Moses dumps a bunch of wine on the high priest. And then
two of the high priests being Hotep and Hoy, right? It's only them at this point.
Yeah,
I was conflating it with the procession of priests earlier who were killed.
No, they're all dead.
Yeah.
Hotep and Hoy survived somehow off screen.
Yes. But yeah, Hotep and Hoy who are voiced by Steve Martin and Martin Short.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not sure who voices who.
I'm pretty sure the short one is Steve Martin.
Okay.
And the tall one's Martin Short, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, very funny voice performances, and it's a funny little kids cartoony moment where they get the wine dunked on them and they're all pissed off about it or whatever. And then there's a big old party that's being thrown, which they are late to because they've been horsing around and harassing the priests. So they like go to the big party, which is in like Ramses' honor, right? And as a party favor, they have brought a woman against her will to perform, I guess, or to just be a lady that is a gift for these two nepo babies.
Yeah.
It sucks. But I guess that was the ancient world for you. And this is Zipporah. This is extra biblical. This does not happen in the actual story of Moses, where Zipporah like meets Moses before he goes into the desert. And therefore it is heresy. So -1 point for this movie for containing extra biblical heresy. But yeah, so here basically Ramses and Moses are huge dicks to her. Surprise, surprise. These rich guys who are being gifted human beings are not, don't treat them very well. And they like take her away because she like tries to bite Ramses or whatever and is not cooperating with being an unwilling performance piece.
Yeah. This is like Ramses' coronation might be the wrong word,
Yeah.
but it's like he's taking over as regent. He appoints Moses to a position and gives Moses a blue ring.
Yes, Royal Chief Architect, which I was like, is he qualified to do this? He literally just knocked over a bunch of, he destroyed a bunch of scaffolding and knocked the nose off a statue. Not sure I want that guy being in charge of architecture.
It also reads as like, well, I got this relative. Where can I put him?
Right.
I'll fucking give him architecture.
Right. It's fully the nepotism thing. Just being like, what's an open position? Yeah, sure, you can do that.
Yeah.
But yeah. And so then they've sent Zipporah to Moses' chambers. Ramses did that as a little bit of a joke. Great. But it is funny because when he gets there, he opens the curtain. It looks like her silhouette's behind there, and there's just this guard who's tied up, and then it pans over, and the two dogs have been tied up too, which is pretty funny.
That got a laugh out of me.
It's a pretty funny joke.
Spoiler alert: I did not laugh at this movie a lot.
Oh, I was laughing a decent amount.
But that was one of the jokes that I laughed at.
Yeah.
And then Zipporah's sneaking out of the temple.
Yeah.
And Moses sees her and distracts a couple of guards and comes up with some excuse so she can sneak out.
Yeah, he does help her escape, which is how we know that he's not irredeemably a huge shitbag.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that earlier he was acting like a real dick to her.
He follows her into the city and sees that she's talking with a couple of Israelites, and then leaves and meets Jeff Goldblum.
Hi, it's me in this movie. I'm here to tell this Bible story.
Jeff Goldblum is Aaron, and Sandra Bullock as Miriam.
Yes,
his sister.
Yeah.
And Miriam recognizes him.
Yes, and seems confused that he doesn't recognize her. And I'm like, he was a baby.
well then because he's like, okay, but get away from me, slave, or whatever. And then she starts singing the song that she sang and the mother sang to him.
Yes.
And he recognizes the melody. Yes. And like, bro, you were a baby.
Yes. That happens here. And then there's also something a little bit later. Maybe it's like right before or after his dream sequence. There are multiple things in this that seem to imply that her singing this song has unlocked memories where he now fully remembers being sent down the river as an infant, which I was like, I don't like. The only way that makes sense is because God canonically exists in this story. It's divine revelation, because otherwise there's no fucking way he's remembering this shit. He was like 2 weeks old. So anyway, but yeah, so she's basically like, oh, you're our brother, don't you remember? She sings a little song, and he runs away all freaked out because core memory has been unlocked.
Yeah, I like this. There's a brief moment where he knocks over an Israelite, like an old man.
Yeah.
And as he's running away, he knocks him over accidentally, and this old man looks terrified.
Yeah.
And I think it's the first time where Moses realizes the way that people actually view him and see him as the Prince of Egypt.
Am I the asshole here?
Yeah.
Am I, as a rich guy who has millions of people enslaved working for my family, not on the right side of history here? It's kind of the first moment he ever realizes that.
Yeah, and he runs back home and he sings a song about
I am a sovereign prince of Egypt.
All of the cool things that he has.
A son of a proud history that's shown. Yeah, the music in this movie whips.
The voice or the vocalists, the singers, which are in most cases different than the voice cast, are great. They're also not credited in the credits.
Yeah, that's weird.
Which is kind of fucked up because
it's weird. They should have been credited.
They're all really good.
Yeah.
I think when we reprise this later during the plague sequence,
Yes.
I think Ray Fiennes is singing his
He
own part.
absolutely is, and you can tell.
Yeah.
You can tell, and Ray Fiennes is not a terrible singer, but all the other singers that they got are very clearly like big-time professional vocalists, and then it's kind of just Ray Fiennes being like, "You who I called brother."
But I really appreciated that. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
We'll get there when we get there, but I think that's the only voice cast member who also sings their own parts.
Yeah. Anyway, so this song I think slaps. I think it's great. And then he falls asleep and has a dream.
I hate when I have nightmares in hieroglyphics.
Okay. The animation style changes for his dream because it's like it turns into hieroglyphics.
Yes.
I kind of think this rocks.
Yeah.
I was watching it last night and being like, how am I going to feel about the animation style shift that I remember from this movie but haven't seen this movie in over a decade? Like, how's that hold up? And I was watching it and I was like, oh, this whips. Like, it's good that they only do it for a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
If too much of the movie looked like this, it would, I think, not be effective. But because it's just this one dream sequence, I'm like, this is kind of rad.
Did parts of this movie scare you as a kid?
Yes, this dream sequence being one of them.
Because this scared me as a kid too.
Yeah.
Because it's very intense. It shows the story of the oppression of the
Yes.
Israelites and how Moses was sent down the river, and then it ends with the reveal of Pharaoh giving children to the crocodiles in the Nile.
There is a hard as hell visual that ends this dream sequence, which is repeated then a couple times later when people are standing in front of this actual hieroglyphics mural, which is just a bunch of babies falling into the river and crocodiles with open mouths at the bottom just being like, hello! and it rocks. It looks so, it's so much more upsetting than you would expect from a children's movie, that it's just like, oh, here's a picture that we will show you multiple times of crocodiles about to eat a ton of babies. And I'm like, oh yeah, hell yeah, that goes hard as hell. And it goes hard as hell in this dream sequence. I think the ending of it did used to scare me as a kid. It wasn't in Green Goblin territory where I had to run away and hide, but I was definitely like a little like apprehensive about watching this part of this movie.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's how I feel about a couple of the other things in this movie that we'll get to.
Yeah.
And then Moses wakes up and runs to a part of the palace that I guess he's never been to before.
Yeah, and it's very funny because this part has the energy of like, oh, let me go search through the archives, but because they're ancient Egyptian, there are no archives. It's just on the walls. It's just hieroglyphics all over the walls. So he's like, which part of the palace tells this part of history, right? Where is that wing of the archives?
If an item does not appear in our records, it does not exist.
You are on such thin ice with the Star Wars references. George Lucas I can hear him pounding at my front door right now. Anyway, So yeah, this is one of the visuals where he's just standing in front of this huge metal ass mural.
Yeah, and they call back to it later as well.
Yeah. And then Patrick Stewart shows up and is basically like, oh, hey, did you figure out that you're a baby that was supposed to be fed to a crocodile? It's fine. We love you like a son. And don't worry about all of those babies who did get fed to crocodiles because, oh, Moses, they were only slaves. Which, that Patrick Stewart delivery, I was like, ugh, I just got like chills down my spine. First of all, it sounds like his character from Green Room.
Oh, God.
and similarly anti-Semitic, just like the Pharaoh in Prince of Egypt. Patrick Stewart's character in Green Room hates Jews as much. And Moses does not react well to this and kind of runs off to have himself a think, right? And then we sort of jump forward a little bit. Ramses is like in charge of some architecture projects, and Moses is out there, and he's looking at the slaves a little bit differently now.
Yeah. There's a slave being whipped repeatedly by an Egyptian.
Yeah.
And Moses up on some scaffolding, and Moses runs over to get him off of him.
Yeah.
And then accidentally
Right.
pushes him off of the scaffold, and he falls and he dies.
Which, by the way, in the Bible,
It's
not an accident.
he absolutely murders this guy.
He murders a dude.
And buries him in sand.
Which does sort of get me a few points off this depiction of this event for this movie, because I'm like, we were already going pretty hard as hell for a kid's movie, showing those babies about to be eaten by crocodiles. Later on, there's like a whole river of blood put to screen in this children's movie. We could make this murder a little bit more intentional and premeditated. I think based on what we're already doing in this movie, let Moses murder this guy. It doesn't have to be a workplace accident.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Moses, despite the fact that this was clearly an accident, which again points off for extra biblical apocrypha and therefore heresy by removing his motivation for this murder.
Is this factoring into your verdict at all?
No. These are imaginary heresy points. He runs away and is basically like, I gotta get out of here. Ramses with a chariot pulled by, I guess, a couple of horses that David wants to fuck.
I don't want to fuck them.
You don't need to look like you're...
I don't not want to fuck them. They just look kind of hot.
I really don't know what you're talking about, but I'm happy for you.
Those big haunches. There's something strong and powerful and manly about a horse.
Was the camel design in this movie doing anything for you?
No.
What about the sheep?
No.
Okay, just the horses.
Just the horses.
All right. I guess I can't talk too much because, like, as a child, one of the things that was my sexual awakening and really made me aware that I was destined to be a heterosexual man was the mouse from The Great Mouse Detective doing her burlesque like strip routine that she does in that movie. So like that's a mouse, which is not necessarily any better than being attracted to an animated horse, I suppose. At least that mouse is anthropomorphic though. She's singing and dancing. Those horses are like whinnying and neighing and doing regular horse shit.
Yeah, I haven't talked about Zipporah yet, but we'll get there.
Anyway. So yeah, Ramses is basically like, don't worry about it, man. I can unmurder that guy.
You're friends with the pharaoh. I can pay off the Egyptian police.
I can make this all disappear. And Moses is like, that's not the point. I have a guilty conscience. Goodbye. And he goes to do his pilgrimage into the desert, right?
Yeah, and at some point here, I think he meets with his mother, and his mother confirms his heritage.
Right.
And he goes and wanders off into the deep deserts of Arrakis without a still suit.
Yes. He gets buried in a sandstorm, and a camel tries to eat his hair like grass. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, this is some of the best imagery in the movie.
Yeah.
Just the montages of him walking through the desert. I really like that.
Yeah.
That stuff. It's all very treacherous and dramatic, and the music's really good.
Yeah.
Let me talk about the music for a second.
Yeah.
I like a lot of the songs. They have good melodies, memorable melodies. Structurally, I don't love a lot of them, and the lyrics are also not always my favorite in places, but Hans Zimmer's instrumental score is really, really good throughout this thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Overall, I like the music, but there are just some issues that I have with the songs themselves.
I agree with you about the score. For me, the songs are pretty much on par. I really love all the songs in this movie, with the exception of, and unfortunately, it's sort of the big climactic song of the movie, There Can Be Miracles When You Believe. That I think the title is just When You Believe. Mm-hmm. That song is the weak point of the songs in this movie for me, where that's the one where I'm like, all right, we're getting a little bit into Cheese Town. I know this is a kids movie, but this does feel a little bit pedantic.
Yeah.
And the rest of the songs I feel like I don't have that issue with. I think lyrically and musically, like they all really hit for me. But I agree with you about like the interstitial score. I think it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, camel tries to eat his hair. It's not grass. He spits it out. And Moses comes upon these girls trying to get water from a well, and they're attacked by bandits who are, trying to steal from them or whatever. And Moses like grabs these bandits' horses and sends them running, so they go running after or camels, I guess, not horses. But so he like saves these girls from the brigands. and then passes out and falls into a well, which is pretty funny.
And then Zipporah shows up.
And then Zipporah shows up for the second time. She's already been in the movie.
Yes. But the girls are like, we need to help rescue the funny man who fell in the well.
Yes.
And she pulls him out, and she realizes it's Moses, and drops him back down the well.
Which is pretty funny. Michelle Pfeiffer's voice performance in this entire movie, but especially in kind of these early bits where she's like sort of flirting with Moses, but also sort of mad at him, I really enjoy. I think her voice performance is pretty good.
Yeah, I think she's good.
Yeah.
Also, want to bang the living hell out of Zipporah.
All right.
So, okay, here's a couple things.
Yeah.
One, just gorgeous. Love. They made a really, really hot cartoon, and I want to fuck her. Secondly,
Yes.
one of the more distinct and memorable character designs of the movie, I think.
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that I want
That you're
to have
attracted
sex
to
with
this
a cartoon.
cartoon. Yes.
Yes.
The only thing I had anticipated that you would bring this up, and the only thing that I've prepared as a response is honestly more of a Miriam guy. She's got kind of like a short, thick thing going on, like
Okay.
short, curvy thing going on, and I was like, all right.
I also see. I think she has the problem that a lot of the characters in this movie have, where her face is kind of angular in a weird way, and her eyes are a little bit far apart.
Well, Moses has the biggest problem
Moses
as far as
has
that's
a
concerned.
huge problem with that.
He does look like
And some
Sid
of
the
the
Sloth
background
from Ice
some
Age.
of the background
Yeah.
Israelites in places. I'm also not a big fan of Sandra Bullock's voice performance.
No, yeah, I don't think the voice performance is as great.
Michelle Pfeiffer's voice coming out of Zipporah, doing a lot for me.
And we can just leave that there. We can leave that right next to those horses and just move on.
It's funny that I spent more time talking about the horses than I did about Zipporah.
It's true. It's true. We hit the horses first.
Yeah.
So
I also started this episode in a lot of voice, so there's been a lot of surprises today.
anyway, so they take Moses back to where they live. These are the Midianites.
Yeah.
He's in Midian. And then, in my opinion, the number one voice performance of this movie shows up.
Danny Glover is Jethro.
Danny motherfucking Glover. And he's barely in this movie, and he is easily the standout of the voice cast for me. I just think every single word he says in this movie, I'm like, yes, yes, yes.
I don't think so.
Really?
I don't dislike him, but I don't think he leaves enough of a mark on this movie. And he sings a great song, but it's not Danny Glover singing.
No,
it.
it's a different person doing it.
But there is something about a tall, bearded, fat guy that is who's very warm and inviting that I find very comforting.
It is
in
very
a children's movie.
It is very funny
he
because
has Ghosts of Christmas Present
Yes.
energy to him.
it is very funny because the way that he's animated, he does look like he's 12 feet tall. Like he is so much bigger
Yeah.
than like his kids, but like so much bigger even than Moses, that I'm like, this man is literally a giant, which you can only really accomplish in animation and have it not be like jarring. Right? Because it's like the live action equivalent of this. Like Moses shows up and there's just this guy who's like 600 pounds and 12 feet tall. Just like, oh, holy shit.
He definitely has a powerlifter body under
Yeah.
there. I don't want to like he's a fat guy, but he's powerlifter
He's strong
fat.
fat. Yeah.
There's this scene where these old women are washing
Yes.
Moses off. I don't know if you clocked this as well.
Oh, I did.
Where he's like, you guys have cleaned every inch of me. And then he goes, I guess not every. I guess.
Yeah, I was wrong.
I was wrong. So they cleaned his dick,
It's so I don't
touched
think
his
I
dick?
don't think it's his dick.
his butthole.
Because he looks behind him when he says that. He says he says you've cleaned every inch of me, and he pops up and then looks behind him like towards his own ass and says I was wrong. So I'm pretty sure they're scrubbing his butthole. I think is what's happening.
Because I couldn't really tell because again the animation isn't necessarily great. So I thought he kind of like looked down. Or
I think
maybe
I think it's backwards.
or
Yeah.
maybe it was because like the hands of the women he's facing forward and the hands of the women like cover him and then he pops up.
Yes.
So I was like, oh, maybe he just got a hand job.
To borrow a phrase from the director of Clerks, Kevin Smith, I'm pretty sure what they cleaned was his Dick Brown taint area. Wait, no, sorry. I was thinking of the wrong thing. He said in that tweet, he said pink brown taint area,
Oh.
and he was talking about his wife. So I guess if
Oh.
you're a man, it would be a Dick Brown taint area.
Okay.
But the actual Kevin Smithism is pink, brown, taint area.
Maybe they tickled his prostate.
Maybe. It's really scrubbing.
This is an episode on a biblical family film.
Yes, that's
ladies
true.
and gentlemen.
That's true.
Yes, but
I mean, it's a joke the movie made.
yeah, I
The
know.
movie made a joke about them cleaning his balls or
But
whatever.
you said taint and I said prostate, and we
Yes.
probably didn't have to.
Oh, well, we didn't have to, but it's our podcast.
They tickle his prostate. Little Annie.
Okay. And then you know, he's being introduced to the whole community here, and that largely happens via a montage that is set to the greatest song ever written and put in a motion picture, which is Through Heaven's Eyes, which is sung by Jethro, not by Danny Glover, but by another singer doing the vocal performance there. And man, this song whips! I was going fucking apeshit on my couch listening to this song. This is the best part of the movie. It rocks, and I cried during this song as well.
You cried during the song as
I
well.
cried during this song.
That's number 2. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the song a lot. It's really good. It has that kind of dancing around a fire, everybody clapping feel to it, which is exactly what's happening
Right.
in the animation here. And yeah, we montage through Moses becoming part of this culture and learning to farm, and his relationship with Zipporah.
Yes, he gets-
turning into marriage.
Yes. One of the reasons I cried during this song is because Moses becomes a wife guy here. And I was like, yes, I was married once. That rocked.
You're still married.
No, I mean,
Oh,
I
went
got
through,
married.
You went through the ceremony.
I
of
had a
marriage.
wedding once,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
what I mean.
Okay.
Yeah. And it rocked, and it's a great thing that happened in my life. And if Through Heaven's Eyes is playing while you're showing me a guy getting married, I'm gonna be fucking bawling like a little baby because I love marriage and I love God.
Yeah, it's one of the more memorable sequences of the movie for me. It definitely perks me back up.
Yeah.
And I I love after this, he gets up in the morning to go do his shepherding thing with the look of a man who has just banged his wife
Yes.
first thing in the morning.
It's true, and
because she's still asleep.
she's dead asleep.
But he wakes up and the sun is gleaming on him, just like he
And
just
he's like,
fucked his
"Hell
wife
yeah."
back to sleep.
Yes. Yeah, it was funny in this scene, which like this is at the end of the little montage.
Mhm.
He kisses her. She's dead asleep, and the podmaster said that Zipporah was husk mode, which is what the podmaster uses to describe herself. The podmaster is a frequent napper. And she talks about going husk mode. And then Moses like gives her a kiss and then like goes out to do his day of work. And I was like, man, he's just like me for real. His wife's asleep and he's like, time to do my little tasks. And his little tasks are being a shepherd. And one of his sheep runs off because it found God. The sheep is like, check this out, you're never gonna believe it.
And this is the burning bush.
Yeah.
This scene kind of scared me as a kid.
Oh, really?
It had a similar effect as the hieroglyphic scene.
I will say, so this didn't scare me as a kid, but I can sort of see where you're coming from, because one of the things I like about this scene is that God is kind of scary, right? They make his voice in this movie sound, mostly it's Val Kilmer, but they have a bunch of other voices layered, right? And mostly it sounds sort of pleasant but commanding. But then a few times the little whispery voices underneath sound a little like creepy and scary. And I'm like, that's the thing I really like about this movie, is that they're not afraid to make their depiction of God otherworldly and uncanny and frightening, you know?
Well, the burning bush is also burning blue.
Yeah.
Instead of red, like a fire would. And there's kind of like ethereal voices.
Thank you for telling us what color fire is. Sorry, I didn't have to do that. I apologize.
Fuck you.
Sorry. I don't know why I decided to just be a dick to you. Continue. Apologies.
There's also ethereal voices in the soundtrack underscoring this scene, and it's in a cave. It's in like a kind of a weird looking cave.
Yeah. It sort of reminded me of Antelope Canyon in northern Arizona.
Okay.
It looks a little bit like that.
I like Val Kilmer's voice performance as God.
Yeah.
Way more than his voice performance as Moses.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that.
I think I love Val Kilmer as an actor.
Yeah.
He's one of the weaker voices in the cast for me.
Yeah, I'm here and there on Kilmer in general, but I do agree with you. I think his voice performance isn't really doing anything special for me as Moses. But I do think he's a strong God.
And this is just the classic, go tell Pharaoh, let my people go.
I really, really love, and we can't give the people who wrote the screenplay any credit for the dialogue here because it's from the Bible, but I really, really love the line, the way that they handle the line from the Bible. Who made man's mouth? Who made the deaf, the mute, the seeing, or the blind? Did not I? It's a great line reading by Kilmer, and the way that they kind of make God's voice like boom, and it kind of blows Moses back, and because it's like God's, not too angry with him, but is insistent, right? Because Moses is giving him excuses, and he's like, "You're talking to a burning bush that made the universe, like go do the thing." And it rocks. I think it's handled very well, and in a way that I think, again, you sort of feel the terror and the majesty of a being that is beyond your mortal understanding.
I also like the part where the smoke from the fire fills the room and Moses sort of floats through it
it's reflected in his eyes and stuff. It's really cool.
I think Val Kilmer does a really good job here as God. I also like his delivery of "I am that I am."
Yeah. Man,
really
what a
good.
great line. Good line, God.
Good line, unknown person who wrote the book of Exodus in the 6th century BC.
And was inspired, of course, divinely to write that book by the Holy Spirit of God the Father, yes. Anyway.
Yeah.
Credits aren't worth anything out here. I need something more real.
I feel like I'm going crazy recording this episode because Watto just keeps showing up. Horses are sexy now. I don't know what's happening. Left is right. Up is down. Anyway, then Moses goes back to Zipporah and is like, hey baby, I have to go back to Egypt and tell the Pharaoh to let all of the Israelites go because a bush that was on fire but wasn't burning told me that it was God. Are you cool with this? And while we were watching this, the Podmaster watched this with me. She was like, if you had been sent on a divine quest by a burning bush claiming it was God, I would go with you. And I was like, thanks, I really appreciate knowing that. Which is what Zipporah does. She's like, all right, count me in.
Well,
let's go.
For a moment, she's like, Moses, you're just one man, and he's like, I gotta do this, and she's like, okay, let's do it then. I'll go with you.
Which is basically what the Podmaster said her reaction would be. She'd be like, first I would check to see if you were good, right? And then she's like, and then I think I'd just do it.
And I thought this was a change from the Bible, but she does go with him in Exodus.
Yeah.
She takes her children.
Yeah, you gotta bring your wife along.
Yeah, I guess so. There's a brief little interlude that isn't in the movie. I don't know why they would cut this, but God decides that he might kill Moses, and then he doesn't.
Yeah.
And then Zipporah decides to circumcise her son in order to appease God.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't know why you'd leave that out of a DreamWorks animated film.
We should see that cartoon foreskin getting cut off. I don't need to see the foreskin getting cut off, but it would be nice to see Zipporah with the foreskin
and she just flips it behind her,
tossing it into the desert. Yeah. I don't know why they would leave that out either, but I do know that foreskin is evil and must be removed. It's not actually that it's evil and must be removed. Canonically, if we're talking about what people of the Jewish and Christian faiths subscribe to, it's part of a symbolic gesture of a covenant with God. It's not actually just anything about the foreskin being wrong or bad in any way. It's just a way to show your devotion, I guess, is sort of the idea. But I think they should have left it in the movie.
Interesting way to show your devotion.
Yeah, well, it hasn't bothered me for my entire life. Everything has been totally fine without that little extra flap of skin. So I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay.
I did not need to know that.
We might cut that out. Hey!
Yay! We might snip that out, circumcise that from the episode.
Yeah. Anyway.
Fuck.
So then they get to Egypt.
Yeah, there's a montage of them riding through the desert that I
Yeah.
really like, where in the foreground at the bottom of the screen you just see Moses and Zipporah on the camel.
Yeah.
And then the backgrounds behind them fade in and
Yeah.
out as they cross the desert.
So they show back up, and basically their reception is more or less, "Hey, what are you doing back here?" from the Israelites, right? And then Moses goes to talk to Pharaoh, and is like, "Hey, so good to see you. No, it's been a really long time." They have a little brother hug,
Yeah.
catch up a little bit, and by the way, you have to let all of your slaves go. And Ramses is like, "Hold up a second." And Moses is like, "Guess what? My stick can turn into a snake. Is that convincing?" Which if I was Ramses, that's maybe convincing. I've
Mhm.
never seen a stick do that before. But then Ramses is basically like, "Okay, let me prove to myself that my faith in all of my Egyptian gods is not total bunk, and bring in my priests." And then we get Playing with the Big Boys, which is a very fun song.
By the power of Ra.
You're playing with the big boys now.
I like that to set this whole up, they have to set the scene, they have to establish some atmosphere, and how they do that is they have slaves on top of these columns that pull down these drapes and then angle mirrors to
Yeah.
form a spotlight.
I do really like the ancient Egyptian theatrical lighting. Yes.
Yeah, is that their job? Or are they just slave stagehands?
Yes, where they're yeah. I don't know. Yeah, because it seems like this is not planned. It seems like it's basically just because Moses showed up, they ended up having to use the spotlight.
Yeah.
So yeah, they must just be stationed there at all times.
They're on platforms. I don't see a way down.
Right. Oh, so they live up there?
Maybe they live up there.
People pass them food through the window. Or they just put one up there until they starve to death and then replace them. But yeah, I like the musical number. I think it's fun and good. I think maybe Steve Martin and Martin Short are also doing their own singing.
Yeah,
here.
that's a good point. They probably are. And yeah, they do a magic show of all of these different magic tricks. It's a really dark and dramatic and kind of silly song.
Yeah.
I like it. We maybe could have cut it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessary for the movie, but the movie's only an hour 39. So I'm like, it's to me, it doesn't feel overly long. I don't know how you felt about it.
I think this movie's a little long in general, and I feel it at this moment.
Okay, all right.
But I like the song in isolation. I like some of the imagery where they summon snakes of their own, and then the snakes kind of fight off screen, and we see Moses' snake swallowing both the other snakes whole.
Yes, which is rad. It's pretty cool. That was another moment that kind of scared me as a kid.
Oh, it did.
Yeah, the snake, the Moses' snake eating the other two snakes. I was always a little freaked out by that.
I think maybe the beginning of this sequence, like the start of the song where they're calling out all the Egyptian gods and stuff, and they're in the shadows and stuff.
Anubis, Anukith.
I think that maybe scared me a little bit, but then the song gets kind of bouncy and silly and weird and fun. So I didn't have much of a problem with it. But it's nice. I think this movie could lose some of its runtime.
Okay.
It's a little long at an hour 40.
Yeah, I don't necessarily feel that myself, but I see where you're coming from.
I'll just come out and say it. There are stretches of this movie where I was just kind of bored, and I think we could probably keep this under 90 minutes, honestly.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, so anyway, he's playing with the big boys now. And then basically Ramses is like, "Well, I'm convinced that you are not more powerful than Martin Short or Steve Martin. So fuck off. I'm not gonna let all the slaves go." Good seeing you though. Nice to see you, bro. And they have a little chat, like one-on-one, because this was in like a big hall full of a bunch of people, and they have like a conversation, just the two of them, where Ramses is like, hey, like, tell me what this is really about, and Moses is like, the thing I said is what it's really about.
Yeah,
like, this is a real deal.
They're on a balcony overlooking the slave pit in Egypt, and Moses is like, slavery is bad.
Right. I had a revelation that slavery was bad when I found out I was one, because I guess that's what it took for him.
Yeah.
And then also a burning bush that said that it was God is what made me realize that I should do something to help end it.
Also, I've been banging this Midian chick. Highly recommend
you
finding
actually
some
know her,
Midian
Ramses.
tale.
It's the weirdest thing. It's that girl who was brought to you as a present.
Midian pussy goes
That's
crazy.
my wife now. You two should catch up. But anyway, so yeah, Moses is basically like, yeah, no, it's actually about the slave thing. I would like for you to not have slaves anymore. And Ramses is basically like, okay, got it. So we're enemies now. I do like the little moment, because Moses gives him the ring back here. And I like the moment of Ramses holding the ring and getting really sad for a second. And he basically is like, I had hoped that, you know, he was hoping that since his brother was back, that things would go back to the way they were before, right? And then it goes from his face, just in the animation, it goes from his face looking really kind of sad and despondent to then his eyes just snap open and he looks mad as fuck.
Yeah, there's a musical sting
great
there.
Hans Zimmer musical sting there. And then he stands up and in his best commanding Ralph Fiennes voice is like, okay, all of the slaves have to work twice as hard now because you had the gall to come in here and ask for this.
It's
fuck off.
Treason, then.
Wait, so now we're just doing Ian McDiarmid?
Yeah. Fucking deal with it.
He's not in this movie, David.
No.
Watto is not in this movie. Watto is not in this movie.
Watto's definitely not in this movie.
And Ian McDiarmid, to my knowledge, is also not in this movie. Ralph Fiennes is in this movie, so Voldemort would have been a better direction to take this, I feel like.
Harry Potter, I will never let your people go.
I don't know enough Voldemort lines to parody, but I got the prequels locked in.
Nagini, I have a stick that can turn into Nagini. Nagini, eat Moses' snake. All right, we're going to have the Muggles build the pyramids for us.
Now I'm starting to lapse into Dr. Loomis.
Plagues have come to your little town, Sheriff.
Okay, now it is, yeah. Anyway, so Moses leaves from talking to Pharaoh and goes back to hang with the Israelites because he's like, well, I got to just stay here until he agrees because I don't want to make that burning bush mad.
Yeah.
And so the Israelites are all pissed at him because they're basically like, hey, you showed up and talked to Pharaoh and told him to let us all go, and now we all have to work harder, so fuck off. Which I do think is great. And that's also a thing that's from the Bible. I love that the Israelites were not like, hey, thanks for championing our freedom here. Because ultimately what it immediately led to was just them being treated even worse. So they're like, fuck, like, mind your own business. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, most of this is delivered from Aaron, played by Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
Who's like, how do you like it when you get thrown in the mud?
Oh, you didn't see because you didn't wish to see. Oh, well, that makes everything fine then, doesn't it? Also, Jeff Goldblum has, much like a horse who walked into a bar, a long face in this movie. This guy's head is like, if you stacked his head on top of itself twice, it would be the length of his torso. His head is enormous. It's very funny character animation.
Yeah. I was surprised reading the book of Exodus this morning that Aaron has a much bigger role in the book of Exodus than he does in this movie.
Yeah.
He's basically Moses' right-hand man.
Yeah, that guy was hanging out.
Yeah.
He was around.
He was doing the miracles right along with Moses.
Yeah.
For most of Exodus. But here he's just kind of bitchy.
Yeah, Aaron kind of gets a bad rap in this movie.
Yeah.
Which, as I recall, my mother had a problem with. when I was watching this movie a lot as a child. I remember that being one of her criticisms of this movie. She was like, they really like gave Aaron the short end of the stick in this movie. He's actually way cooler than that in the source material. So yeah, but it's funny because it's Goldblum.
Yeah.
Giving him shit.
I'm not really thrilled with Goldblum's voice performance in this either.
He just sounds like he's not doing a thing. He just sounds like Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, he's not even doing his Goldblum thing.
Yeah.
He just sounds like Jeff Goldblum.
Right. Yeah. No, he's not doing anything special, and he's also not in the movie a ton.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, so then Moses goes from having mud thrown at him by the Israelites to being mocked from a yacht. Ramses is like yelling at him, being like, "What's up, bitch? I got a yacht. How are you feeling hanging out with slaves?"
This Israelite is interrupting my boat ride. And then Moses turns the water into blood.
Yeah, and it kind of rules.
Not as much as it does in Exodus, Gods, and Kings.
Okay, well, I haven't seen that movie, and it's not what we're talking about.
So you want to know how they do it?
Sure.
Crocodile attacks.
Ah.
We get 2 minutes of crocodile attacks, pulling people off of boats.
So the crocodiles turn the water
Crocodiles
to blood.
turn the water to blood.
Well, that's
not biblical.
Right. It's extra biblical and
yeah.
therefore heresy.
Well, so the way that they do the plagues is really interesting, where one plague kind of leads into another.
Yeah.
So like the frogs come, and then the frogs all die.
Yeah.
And then the pests feast on the frogs.
The locusts.
Locusts, and then the locusts infest like the food, and then that leads to the boils. I don't exactly remember the order, but it sort of has one of them lead into the other more naturally. And it's really cool. And I also like crocodile attacks in movies, and it's a really good crocodile attack sequence.
But that's not what happens.
That's not what happens in this movie.
He dips his stick in the water and it just turns into blood.
Yeah, which is what happens in the Bible.
Yeah. And I think the visual here is pretty cool and pretty compelling. And I think it's fun that, because then the priests do a thing where they put some powder into water and it turns red, right? I think it's fun that theirs is like very much the color of like Kool-Aid, and the blood river that Moses made, it like looks pretty much actually like blood. I like the color difference. I think that's fun. I will say, in the Bible, the priests who respond and do the same thing as Moses, it is not called out in the Bible that they did it through some kind of charlatanism or chicanery, right?
Right.
It seems like they just actually did the same thing too.
Yeah, and I don't think it's very specific. It just says like, and then they did the same magic or something like that.
Yeah. Which I kind of would have liked to see in this movie. It kind of would have been fun if it was like, oh yeah, Moses has like the power of God on his side and is doing these miracles, but these priests also are just able to do magic. Because that's what it seems like is the thing in the Bible. It would just seem, I feel like it would be fun if we didn't see him like pull his little pouch of dust out and put it in the water. It's like, no, he can just do that. It just seems more fun. I don't know.
Oh, Ramses is like, see, they turned the bowl into red water.
There is a bowl of Kool-Aid here. This is clearly the same thing as the whole Nile now being blood. Ergo, fuck off.
One thing about the Book of Exodus, it repeatedly makes reference to the fact that God is intentionally making Pharaoh obstinate.
Yes, he's hardening his heart.
His heart.
Yeah.
And they don't do anything like that in this movie. There's there's nothing that shows that God has any influence over the Pharaoh.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you feel about that? I don't know.
I mean, I think it's the right narrative choice for the movie to not show that.
Yeah.
Especially because that's kind of a heady idea for a kid's film. Although this is a story that we tell children, if kids are raised religious. But yeah, I don't know. I think, as far as the implications of that in the story itself, I think it's one of those things, right? Where it's like the whole thing with God as depicted in most religions, right, is that the idea of what makes sense in terms of like human priorities, human morality, human whatever, is sort of the idea is God is like advanced beyond that level, right? And so like divine stuff that happens doesn't necessarily make human sense, because it's like, well, if he wants Pharaoh to let the Israelites go, why wouldn't he do the opposite of hardening his heart and just make him agree, right? Just be like, okay, well, I'm God, so boop, you have decided to say yes.
He's
right?
just like, I'm going to make it intentionally harder for you,
Right.
Moses.
What's the point? And the point is that we have to do the plagues. The point is we have to like have this demonstration of the power of this unknowable, incomprehensible force, right? And it's like, to what end? I don't know. That's God's stuff, right? Who knows, right? But it's like, no, it was important that the frogs came and the bugs came and all the kids died and the sky turned black and all that like heavy metal album cover stuff. Like, that was an important part of it. So that's what happened, I guess.
We needed Metallica to write a song called Creeping Death.
Right,
in,
exactly.
1984.
If that
had to
and
do
if
it.
we didn't have the story of the plagues, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Maybe that was the point. Maybe God just really wanted Creeping Death to be written. But you know, like that's always how like my brain has thought about this stuff is like, is that the way he did it? I don't know. I'm not God. It doesn't make sense to me. And I don't think it should make sense to any human being, right? Is sort of the point. Right? Because it's like, yeah, it's kind of an exercise in futility to be like, why does God let bad things happen? Like, I don't know, you know, is sort of the answer that I feel like you have to come to.
Yeah, I was just wondering because it was something I completely forgot about from the Exodus story.
Yeah.
Again, because the most exposure I've had to it is through the Prince of Egypt.
Yeah.
I've read the book of Exodus before, but this was my first time returning to it, and I completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
And am not a religious person, so I wasn't sure how you rationalized it and kind of squared with it.
Yeah.
So then the plagues happen.
Yes.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's cool. It's a great sequence.
It's awesome.
Everybody who has seen this movie and has some attachment to it really likes the sequence for good reason. It's metal as fuck. The frogs come, bugs come, it gets dark, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, I forgot that one of the plagues in the Bible is hail.
Burning hail, yes.
And it's I think it's like hail and thunder and lightning.
Yeah.
And here it's just depicted as like fire falling from the sky.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know if that's extra biblical and therefore heresy.
Probably. I'd have to go back to the verse.
I did read it really quickly this morning. So.
No, I think you're right. I think it's maybe regular hail in the Bible. I don't think it's necessarily on fire.
But fire is definitely a lot more visually evocative.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I like the song in the plague sequence too. I like the little bit where it feels very stage musical to me, where Ray Fiennes and whoever is singing the Moses part are singing their little duet portion, and the screen is split, and on one side you have Ramses and on the other side you have Moses.
Yeah, it's very cool.
It feels so much like just stage musical stuff where it's like now they're on either side of the stage and Ramses is lit with a blue spotlight and Moses is lit with a red spotlight and they're like singing towards each other.
Yeah, and it's
fun.
It's a reprise of that All I Ever Wanted melody, and it's really good. It's one of the better musical sequences in the movie.
Yeah, and the chorus that's singing the like plague specific thing that's not the reprise does kind of sound like the Burning Bush voices, which I appreciate because it's like the voice of God. It's pretty fun. And then we get I think a kind of a cool visual, and this is also from the Bible, where Egypt is in darkness. There's like just darkness shrouding it entirely, but then the little village where the Israelites live outside of the Egyptian city in their kind of like slave shanty town, that's bathed in light, which is kind of just a very cool visual to see. Like it's literally day and night.
Moses goes to the temple to find Ramses, and he's sitting in that same room that he was skulking in earlier when they were friends.
Yeah, and he's all covered in boils and shit.
Yeah. And Moses is like, "Hey man, can you just let my people go?" And Ramses is like, "I fucking knew you were gonna say that." And
just a broken record, this guy. Always with the "let my people go."
And we're skipping over all of the times he comes to see Pharaoh
But between every single
each
plague.
individual plague.
Being like, okay, so the frogs were not that convincing. How about how'd you feel about the locusts? No? All right.
Okay, locusts were doing it for
hey,
you.
it's really dark out. There's fire falling from the sky. How about now? Yeah.
Moses kind of tries to break the ice and shares a memory that he has of them getting into trouble. And it's I really like this moment where they break and they remember that they're brothers for a moment.
Mhm.
They're friends.
Yeah.
And then Ramses, little shit ass kid, is like, "Isn't that the man who did all this, father?" And Ramses is like, "Yeah, good point. Fuck this guy."
Hey, yeah, good point. I'm actually very mad at you.
There's
you know, people have been dying from flaming ice falling on them, right? Could you cut that shit out? And Moses is basically like, if you want this to stop, you know what you have to say. All you have to say is that we can leave. So it's a bit of an impasse. Ramses' kid is very annoying.
Yeah.
He only has like 2 lines, and both times I'm like, man, what an annoying child.
Thank God the angel of death is gonna fucking take him away in a few minutes here.
God makes no mistakes.
We have the death of the firstborn.
Yeah.
This scared me as a kid too.
Me too. This opens. They lead into this with Moses' voiceover talking about how the Israelites, and this is where the holiday of Passover came from, right? Is they have to paint their doorposts and like the top of the door with the blood of a lamb. I missed this as a kid. When he's doing the voiceover, like, and it ends, and we see like an Israelite like shutting their door to like hunker down for the night. There is a shot where like the door's shutting, and in the foreground, just dead on the street, there's the head of a sheep.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I watched this twice and I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, it's not like a severed head.
Yeah.
It's just only the head's in frame,
Mhm.
but it is dead, and it's kind of like teeth are kind of jutting forward and its tongue's hanging out. Like that is a lamb that has just been killed to have its blood paint someone's door. And I was like, that's hard as hell. And I didn't notice it as a kid, but I'm like, that is like very, very intense for you to include in this kid's movie, to be like, and now we're showing the dead animal that this blood came from. And they show a lot of the blood too. I was like, yeah, it's pretty.
Them painting the blood on the door.
It goes pretty hard. And then the actual Angel of Death sequence is pretty scary, and I think scared me as a kid too.
And there's no music. It's silent.
No. And there's like when the Angel of Death comes and kills one of the firstborn, there's just kind of like a breath, an exhale of breath sound, which is very unsettling and very cool.
And then one of them, we see a candle go out.
Yeah.
They do that in Exodus: Gods of Kings too. Ridley Scott definitely watched this. I think
probably my favorite one here, and the one that scared me the most as a kid, is the one
kid that drops the pot.
Yes, yeah, The Angel of Death goes into this house, and there's like a kid who just walked. You just saw him walk inside carrying a little pot, and you hear the sound of the pot shatter. You hear the little exhale sound. Sound of the pot shatters, and then his dead arm just flops out of the doorway. And even as an adult, I was like, that is very fucked.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking metal.
It rocks. It's and in my Letterboxd review, I did say there's a bunch of images in this movie that I think you could put on a death metal album cover, and they would be totally at home there. That doorway with that kid's dead arm just laying outside of it, I think absolutely could be on the cover of a metal album. Yeah, similar to some of the fire hail images and stuff earlier, the blood river. I'm like, so much of this you could just put on, if I saw that when I was flipping through records, I'd stop and be like, hey, what's this? Maybe I should buy this.
A lot of the slavery imagery during the Deliver Us sequence is very evocative for me too.
Yeah.
There's a shot that like crawls up this like web of scaffolding as they're building a monument or something, and then there's people working on the scaffolding.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not OSHA compliant at all. But definitely seems like it would be right at home on a Morbid Angel album cover.
Yeah. So the Angel of Death comes and takes all the firstborn. There's a great Ramses does threaten before, like in the last scene that
Yeah,
he has
yeah,
with
yeah.
Moses, he does threaten to basically do this, but to all the Israelites firstborn. He's basically
he's like, I'm going to do a genocide, and there
Yeah.
will be a great wailing in Egypt.
Yes, a great cry in all of Egypt, and it's a great Ray Fiennes delivery, such as there never has been or ever will be again. And then we're coming full circle on that threat, because the way this Angel of Death sequence ends is like the little wisp of God smoke goes back up into the sky, and there's silence for a second, and then you just hear a bunch of people start to scream from this darkened Egyptian city. And it's really effective. It's very unsettling. I do also like the little bit here where Moses goes to see Ramses, right? And is like,
hey, where are we on that whole letting my people go thing?
Hey, no,
We're running out of ideas. I think we kind of struck gold with this whole death of the firstborn thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can follow it up.
Hey, I know that it's a hard time for you. I know that you're grieving. Just wanted to sneak in here for just a little second here and see if we've come to a decision on that whole letting my people go issue. And Ramses is basically like, yes, take your people and get the fuck out of here.
Get the fuck out.
And I like that there's a couple little moments here that I like, and I think to your earlier point, introduce a little bit more of the human kind of psychological aspect of this story, rather than like just kind of paint by numbers religious story Sunday school stuff. One of them is Moses goes to put his hand on Ramses to comfort him here, and Ramses pulls away from him and kind of growls at him to leave. And Moses looks very upset by this, right? Because he knows that he's just doing what he was supposed to do according to what God told him, but he feels very like personally guilty for all of it. And after he leaves Ramses, he's kind of walking back into the Israelite little town, and he breaks down and cries. And I think that is a moment that they didn't have to include, and I'm really glad they did. I'm really glad they show that Moses doesn't feel good about this, right? It's like it's sometimes doing what you are destined to do, fated to do, instructed to do sucks and is bad and feels like shit, right? And I was like, I really kind of enjoy that they show that.
Yeah, I think this movie does a decent job of showing Moses as a conflicted character. I wish that some of the writing was better, and I wish that Val Kilmer's voice performance was better to really sell it. It is
notable that the two moments I just mentioned are entirely visual and contain no dialogue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's something that they do really well in Exodus Gods and Kings.
Yes.
Where they make it very clear that like Moses is a little crazy. He's kind of, and the Israelites are like questioning him a lot and questioning his sanity. And I think Christian Bale does a good job with it, but we're not talking about that movie. I just wanted to bring it up because I watched it and it's just this movie, but more metal. There's more chariots, first of all. And
I assume there's
crocodile attacks.
Higher MPAA rating.
It's PG-13.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's a big battle at the beginning. It's pretty metal. I was surprised at how much I liked it because I know people did not. If you can get past the whole everyone's white thing.
Yeah, which is also a problem in this movie. Anyway. And then, so then there can be miracles when you believe.
There can be miracles.
Yeah, we all leave Egypt.
Yeah.
And we sing a very inspirational song that I had to sing in my 5th grade choir.
Oh.
Yes. Although hope is frail, it's hard to kill. I even still remember some of the Hebrew from this song.
Yeah.
Because I sang it in 5th grade choir.
I like the Hebrew part.
Yeah.
I like that we get some Hebrew.
Yes, I remembered when I was watching it, I was like, oh, I know some of those Hebrew words. I don't know what they mean, but I memerized them in 5th grade because I had to sing this song in choir.
I know Adonai.
Yeah,
which
that's God.
I know that because I listen to the death metal band Behemoth, and they write every song about Satan and God, so they just have to use all of the different names for God. So
because otherwise they'll run out of
material. Get Yahweh, we get Elohim, we get Adonai.
Yeah. Anyway, so I like the song okay. Like I said, it is the weak one of the movie for me. But I do like the Hebrew bit. I think that part of the song is like the highlight.
Yeah. Weirdly cheery moment after.
It is. The tone shifts maybe a little too quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they wander through the desert, and then we get the Red Sea.
It's very funny because Moses has been leading them, and they're like singing this happy song, and then they come down this hill, and there's just a sea.
But they all still look happy.
Right.
They're not like, so what do we do now, Moses?
What do we do now, genius? You got a fucking... Can that stick turn into a fucking boat?
We gonna fucking ford the sea like Oregon Trail? In our wagons?
I don't think the camels can do that, Moses. I don't think the sea is shallow enough. And he's like, hold on, guys. I got an idea. But before he has an idea, Ramses has decided, hey, that whole letting your people go thing, maybe not feeling that as much.
Yeah. Maybe slavery was working out for us.
Yeah.
And maybe
I think it's
us having to build the pyramids kind of sucks.
I think probably what happened is he was like, okay, fine, my son is dead. This really sucks. And the way to make it stop is to let the people go. So sure, fine. And then the next morning, he sat down with his executive board, right? And was like, okay, now let's talk about projects. I really want to put this whole plagues thing behind us. The Israelites are gone. That problem is solved. Like, let's talk numbers, right? And the finance team is like, okay, yeah, so about that, without slave labor, you're going to be looking at these numbers. And he's like, fuck, I really got to get those slaves back.
They spent about an hour being like, okay, let's try this whole we're gonna build the pyramids thing, and then afterwards they were like, this sucks. These stones that we have to haul for these pyramids,
hey, did you know this shit
fucking
is
heavy as
really
fuck? We should get some people to do this for us. And we gotta save money, so maybe we don't pay them.
Yeah.
Like maybe we just get some. Hey, didn't we have those?
Do you know how strong you would have to be?
Ramses, where did all those slaves go?
To pull this rope that like lifts this pulley full of bricks? I'm not that strong. You know who's that strong? All those slaves that we just let go. It's weird that they weren't overpowering us before because they are doing a lot of manual labor and have a lot of physical strength.
I like during the sad slavery montages, there's guys whose job is to just like I don't know, like I don't know, mud. They do mud things.
Yes, yeah, their job is mud.
Their job is mud.
Yes, much like the peasants in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, they are just wallowing in muck, and that is their occupation.
And
yes.
there's a lot of shots of them looking really tired and sad and weak, and I'm like, that seems like the easiest job out there.
Yes, yeah,
that's the easiest of the slavery jobs.
If you're a slave in ancient Egypt, you are begging for muck duty. Please put me in the muck pits. I will move muck around all day. Anyway, so Ramses shows up with his whole army basically being like, hey, slaves, you had a nice little walk. Time to go back to Egypt. And Moses is like, well, I don't really know what to do here, but the stick has worked so far. So stick goes in the water. Let's see what that does. And hey, don't you know it? It's the parting of the Red Sea. Yeah, that's a thing that people know about from this story.
And a pillar of fire shoots up from the sea and shoots down onto the Egyptians. That's from the Bible?
From the Bible, and in the Bible, the pillar of fire had appeared before they get to the Red Sea, because the pillar of fire has been guiding them. It's telling them where to go, which that was like a Sunday school thing that I heard that really stuck with me, where it was by night a pillar of fire and by day a pillar of smoke. Right? Where it was basically just God being like, this way, right? And I was like, that's cool as shit. That's insane.
That's like a waypoint marker in a video game.
Right. But
Your next objective
is the land of milk and honey. Estimated time of arrival 40 years. I like how they do the pillar of fire in this movie. I like it like cutting off the Egyptians. I like when they're like Ramses is like in his chariot and he's like, maybe I can just ride faster and go around it, and the pillar of fire is like, nope. Guess what, motherfuck? I'm fast as fuck, boy. And blocks him. And so then the Red Sea parts. The animation of both of the Pillar of Fire and both the Red Sea
Yes.
parting looks really good.
Yeah, there's this is that time when DreamWorks started incorporating CGI into their traditionally animated movies.
Yes.
Occasionally has mixed results in these movies, but the Red Sea stuff and the Pillar of Fire is really good.
Speaking of the fact that they were mixing 3D animation and 2D animation, DreamWorks was working on a different animated picture, a 3D animated picture, at the same time that this movie was in production. A little film that you might have heard of called Shrek. The Podmaster learned a very funny part of trivia about this movie, which is if an animator got fired off of The Prince of Egypt, they would have to go work on Shrek. If their animation wasn't good enough for The Prince of Egypt, they would just be punted over to the team working on Shrek. And it was literally the animators started calling it getting Shreked. They like had a word for it because they were like, oh, you got to make sure that you like make deadline, and you got to make sure that you're like doing lots of passes, like do lots of edits on your sketches and stuff, because you don't want to get Shreked. Because apparently people did not enjoy working on that other film. It was a punishment for DreamWorks animators. They were basically like, the project you want to be on is The Prince of Egypt. If you can't hack it at Prince of Egypt, your ass is going to Shrek.
You're hanging out with Donkey and Lord Farquaad.
Which I do think is very funny, and also explains a lot about the disparate quality between the animation in those two pictures.
Yeah, I know you're going to talk about how much you hate Shrek.
Shrek sucks. Shrek is not good. There's no amount of childhood nostalgia that is associated with that film for me, because I saw it as a child and thought it sucked shit then. I saw Shrek as a kid and I was like, this is bad. I don't enjoy this. I will never understand the fandom that movie has. I think it's dog shit. Anyway,
maybe we should talk about it on the show. That'd be
yeah,
fun.
we should probably do Shrek. That would be
Haven't seen it
a
in a
funny
while.
episode from just because it would torment
for
me.
the memes.
Yeah, it would pain me to watch it, and I would be annoyed talking about it. So that's probably good audio.
Yeah, I'd probably get horny about the dragon.
Pff,
Would I? I don't know.
I don't know. I thought you were going
definitely-
to say
definitely-
Fiona.
Definitely confused me as a kid. Fiona, yeah, I never got the ogre Fiona thing.
Oh,
I never got into that.
Hmm.
But when she was a human, I thought
When
she
she's a
was
lady?
attracted.
Yeah.
But I never got the ogre Fiona fetish that many others have.
I feel like we're talking way too much about hot cartoon characters in this episode.
This is a weird cartoon movie to do that with.
Yeah. Anyway, so they all start walking across the Red Sea. The Israelites are walking across the Red Sea. I do like that
They
they're
take their sweet fucking
I
time too.
Well, I like that they're kind of not sure about it at first.
Yeah.
Because Moses puts a stick in the water, and the water parts, and it's these huge walls of water, and it's still the bottom of a sea that they're traversing.
Yeah.
So it's like rocky and uneven and looks very hard to walk through. And also, at any point, if the god power stops doing this and you're just in the middle of the ocean, you're fucking toast. You will be immediately crushed by the pressure of these two walls of water coming together, right? So I like that the Israelites are like, is it safe to go in there? And I like that it's actually Jeff Goldblum. It's Aaron,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Who's like, looks safe to me. Do and like starts walking in, and everybody's like, "Hey, if it's good enough for Aaron,
This is my character development. I'm friends with Moses now.
yeah."
But
But
did this make you cry?
the parting of the Red Sea?
Pardon the Red Sea.
No, but
walking through the Red Sea.
No, but I did feel a sense of tremendous like awe at the majesty that is depicted here.
Mhm.
Similar to when I watched this movie as a child. I think this part of this movie is sort of awe-inspiring.
Yeah, I agree.
I was not crying though.
I didn't know if it would translate into to tears for you.
Not quite.
I'll talk about the best shot in this movie.
Yeah.
Which is the whale.
Big fish, yeah.
So good.
Yeah. It's great.
They're like walking along the bottom of the sea with torches, and then they look up and they see the outline of this whale. That's kind of that like there's lightning going on, so it's silhouetted by the lightning. One of the images of this movie that stood out to me a ton as a kid and still does.
Yeah.
Best shot in the movie.
It's great. It's a great visual. And yeah, this whole kind of bottom of the Red Sea sequence is full of I think kind of good visuals and great moments.
Yeah.
I like there's a part when like a little wagon or cart breaks down, and this old man is like trying to like get it back moving, and Moses is just like, leave it, like, come on. It'll be fine. It's like a nice little moment. There is a moment that did make me laugh. It's a visual gag where one of the camels that they're taken through here just looks awe-inspired as he's walking through the bottom of this parted sea. He's just kind of like, holy shit, is like the look on this camel's face. And then Jeff Goldblum goes, yeah, me too. Which I thought was funny. It got a laugh out of me. So then anyway, they're like close to the other side of the Red Sea. And God decides it's time for his biggest prank of all, his biggest goof of all on old Ramses here, which is, hey, guess what? Pillar of Fire's gone. Go on in. And Ramses is like, hey, that was weird. All right, let's go kill those guys, right? And they like ride into the Red Sea, and Moses is like, hey, the soldiers are coming. Like, let's get everybody out of here. And they
pick it up.
And pretty much like the last Israelite steps foot on the shore, and immediately the water is just like, doosh. Which I do think the effect here, like the animated effect of the sea coming back together, is really cool.
Yeah.
I love all these Egyptian guys getting like tossed by the waves and shit. Ramses does get ejected from the water by like a jet, like a huge wave. And it like throws him like 30 feet into the air and onto a rock. And then he's alive after that, which is bullshit. He should have been pulverized. His organs should have been like reduced to jelly.
He should be paste.
It is horseshit that he survived.
They should have to scrape him off that with a spatula.
And I feel like they even do a big like impact sound of him hitting the rock. I feel like there's like a real meaty like thunk, right? And I'm like, that guy's dead. But instead he gets up and yells, Moses!
Yeah, we cross-cut between him and Moses, and he's like, Moses, you motherfucker!
I'll see you in The Prince of Egypt Part 2, motherfucker! Yeah, no, presumably he goes back to Egypt and they find some other people to make slaves, I guess, is what really happens. And then, Moses goes and he gets the 10 Commandments.
And then the 10 Commandments
happens.
And
there can be miracles when you believe.
Yeah.
And then they do that song again over the credits, but worse.
Yeah, they get someone to sing it.
Yeah.
Some lady to sing it.
Yeah.
Justice Cry count. 2?
2. Yeah. You were close with 3.
Okay.
I got close during the Red Sea sequence.
That's what I thought.
I didn't quite get there.
Justice is The Prince of Egypt from 1998, directed by Simon Wells, Steve Hickner, and Brenda Chapman. The greatest movie ever made.
David, this still really worked for me. I do still think this movie is pretty incredible in terms of its animation, in terms of how mature a lot of the themes are, and how maturely a lot of the story beats are treated in a movie that is ostensibly for children. It still does feel like, as an adult, there's a lot of like emotional stakes at work in this thing, and a lot of visuals that like even as an adult are pretty striking and not always in a pleasant way, right? Like sometimes shit gets a little freaky and a little scary in this movie. I think the songs rip. I think the score is great, like you said. I think mostly the animation looks gorgeous. And this is another sort of situation for me where I'm like, nostalgia factor here is pretty strong. I don't want to let that, guide my verdict too much. But watching this last night, I had a great time with it. I had been wanting to watch this movie for a couple years. I've been thinking about rewatching this movie. And so I felt like I kind of finally did it. And I was like, did it live up to that anticipation, that like couple of years where I've really been having the itch to go back to the Prince of Egypt? And I think it did live up to it. I feel like this movie has not degraded much in terms of a cinematic experience versus how I remember it from my childhood. I would have considered it one of the greatest movies ever made then. And I'll give it a soft yes now as well. I think, yes, The Prince of Egypt is the greatest movie ever made because it's pretty exceptional for an animated film. I think it stands high above some others of its ilk. And also I love God, and this movie's about God. David, is The Prince of Egypt the greatest movie ever made?
No, it is not the greatest movie ever made.
I knew you were going to say no. I didn't know that you were going to bring Watto back.
Oh man, look at those levels on the recording. Just getting fucking bricked.
That's happening every single time you're doing the Watto voice, by the way, because you didn't do it when I set your levels. If you're planning on screaming like Watto, do it when I'm setting your levels.
I'll have to do it at every recording.
Because you just might
who
do
knows?
it.
It might come out.
You can't control it.
Watto's stubby little wings might just flap their way out of me.
In the Revenge of the Sith, when they go back, when Anakin goes back,
Attack the Clones.
Or Attack of the Clones. When he goes back and he's like, "Hey, you son of a bitch, where's my mother?"
Yeah.
Am I remembering correctly that one of Watto's wings is like injured there?
I don't remember.
Or does he have a little cane?
I mean, he's older. I think he might be like sitting on something and.
I feel like he has been crippled somehow, which I must imagine, given his gambling habits, his bookie did to him.
Yeah.
I'm assuming he had the shit beat out of him. Yeah. For not being
I owed him $1,000 and he break my legs with a cane.
He said if I don't pay him again, I sleep with the fishes. Annie, you got 2,000 credits you can loan me for old time's sake.
Speaking of slavery, they never specify why Anakin and Shmi are slaves or what their slavery entails.
Right.
Which is weird.
I think it's because George Lucas didn't know.
Yeah, he just
God damn it!
They were just slaves and he races in a pod race.
I knew we had invoked Star Wars too much, and now this motherfucker is sitting in my office again.
It's okay, Justice. Maybe we'll cut it.
Maybe.
And then we'll put it back in the special edition.
David, why don't you tell me what you thought of this fucking movie?
No, it's not the greatest movie ever made.
Yeah, no.
I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, it's a movie about God. I don't like that because I'm an atheist and I like Satan.
Yeah.
Whatever. I think this movie's good.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. I struggle with the voice cast in a lot of places. I think Ray Fiennes is the standout for me. I think Ray Fiennes is fantastic. Patrick Stewart does a good job as well. Michelle Pfeiffer's really good. I think the script really struggles in places. I also think the tone of this thing is pretty dry. Not that I need it to be a funny slapstick kids DreamWorks animated movie like Shrek or Road to El Dorado or anything like that. There are stretches of this movie that I just kind of find boring and fall asleep a little bit. That all being said, there's a lot of stuff visually that I enjoy here. I think the animation itself and the character designs aren't great, but a lot of the backgrounds, a lot of the framing of those shots, those are the things that have stuck with me over the years. The burning bush, the whale in the Red Sea, all of the plague stuff, the slavery stuff, and the depiction of the Egyptian civilization, all that stuff's really good. And I really respect that. I do respect an animated movie that knows how to tell its story visually. I just wish that script was stronger. And it also just feels really safe and sanitized, and part of that's because it's a kids movie. Stuff like Martin Scorsese's movies, like Silence and Last Temptation of Christ, those really work for me because they put the humanity back into biblical stories and biblical characters. And as an atheist, I find that I can relate to them that way. This feels like a movie for Christians made by Christians. It feels a little pandering and pedantic at places, and safe. So I'm kind of mixed on it overall, although I do like it, but not the greatest movie ever made.
Fair enough.
Mostly because it doesn't have Watto.
but next week's film doesn't have Watto either, David.
That's a good point.
It has a different alien. Tell our listeners what we're going to be talking about next week.
So this week we celebrated Passover.
That's right.
Next week we're celebrating Alien Day.
Alien Day.
The only made up bullshit corporate franchise holiday that I've decided to celebrate.
Yeah, May the 5th? Fuck that.
Other than Star
Or
Wars
May
Day?
the
May the 4th. No, it's
What the fuck is my problem?
It's May the 4th and then Revenge of the 5th.
That's dumb as fuck.
It is. But Alien Day, April 26th.
Yeah.
Because the planet is LV-426. Which is whatever. We're talking about Alien.
Yes,
you
we're
fucking assholes.
Talking about Ridley Scott's Alien.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'll be fun.
That'll be fun. It's a good movie. Join us for that. It's Alien Day, so we're going to talk about Alien and talk about something that's completely inappropriate for children, unlike this movie, and will probably be just as crass and vulgar on
We'll
that
probably be
episode as
less
we are here.
crass and vulgar on that episode, because on this one you talked about being horny for animals. I mean, I guess you might be horny for the xenomorph as well. I wouldn't blame you. It is a highly sexualized being, as we will discuss at length next week.
You listeners at home don't see the face that I'm making at Justice right now.
It is truly, I would describe it as a lascivious expression.
In space, no one can hear you. Podcast. Join us next week for Alien. In the meantime, talk about the show, tweet about the show, tell a friend to listen to the show. Maybe not this episode. And leave a review. Has anyone done that yet?
No.
Fucking do that. I swear to God. I'm just kidding. I'm in a very weird mood, and as you can tell, I need to end the show. I had trouble with this last week.
That's correct.
Show's over.
Yes.
Go home.
And as always,
Later, dipshits!
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Greatest Movie Ever Made. Please remember to leave us a rating and a review, and to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. We appreciate you supporting the show and spreading the word. Tell your friends to listen, tell your enemies to listen, tell your mom to listen. If your neighbor has an unsecured Bluetooth speaker, connect to it and play an episode. You can follow us on social media at TGMEM_podcast, and if you've got a movie that you want us to talk about, send us an email at thegreatestmoviepodcast@gmail.com.
Tricks don't work on me, only money.
Have you ever heard of the tragedy of Ramses the Great? I thought not. It's not a story the Israelites would tell you.
I just don't even know what to do with this.
Okay, it's all right.